being aware of how I respond to that type of communication, so that it creates a comfortable environment and encouragement for you to continue to be honest with me.
The first thing that came to my mind, this sounds like me and my toddler. Basically. That's what that sounded like to me. Like,
hi, friends. Welcome back to another episode of the Friends on Friends podcast. Hi, Belzy.
Hey. How are you?
I'm good. How are you, girlfriend?
I'm doing excellent.
Wow. I'm not doing excellent, guys. I'm just doing okay.
Well, sometimes you have to speak it into existence, you know?
That's true. That's true. Well, this week's episode is going to be really interesting. So we reached out to a number of our male subscribers specifically and asked them if there was any questions that they had, or if they wanted our perspective on anything. And ladies and gentlemen, they did not disappoint. So we have a couple questions from our male viewers, and we're going to see if we can try to answer their questions and tackle some of the topics that they wanted us to discuss. So we're just going to get on started.
All right. Sounds good.
The first question/comment that we got says, do you believe your relationship with your parents mirrors your romantic relationships?
Interesting. That's a very good question, actually. Thoughts?
It is. Why don't we start with you, Belzy?
No, we'll start with you. I'm on to you. We will start with you.
God. Okay. I initially, on seeing that question, I took it two ways. One is, how does what I see in the relationship between my parents, how does that visual affect my outlook on relationships? And also, how does my relationship with each parent individually, or even as a unit, how does that affect my relationships romantically? So I guess looking at to tackle it from what I see of my parents have been married for many years. And I guess seeing that gives me a positive perspective on marriage. My dad is, I believe, my mom's first boyfriend. So I would say they're kind of like high school sweethearts. And so, I think that they have a very wholesome, traditional type of relationship. And so I think that definitely that influences how I perceive relationships going forward, what I would look up to if I were going to get married. I would definitely want to have a stable relationship like they have. I would say my parents very rarely disagree in a way that's disruptive. I've never heard my dad raise his voice to my mom, and I've never heard my mom raise her voice to my dad. So they disagree in a very civil way. So I think that has been a positive example for me in terms of what I expect from couples when they disagree, because I've never seen it get ridiculous or just, disrespectful. I think those types of things, definitely, it has influenced me and how I show up to a relationship. I have a great relationship with both my parents. I always say my mom is one of my favorite people, and I would say my dad is a very nice dad. So, when it comes on to how that influences how I pick a boyfriend or a partner, I think I'm looking for somebody who would treat me with the same level of respect that my dad treats me with. And when I think about my relationship with my mom, if I were to ever get married, I would hope that that person's mom, that I could have the same sort of rapport with a mother-in-law in the same way that I have with my mom.
I explored that question in the same two ways that you did, looking at my relationship with my parents, but also examining the relationship they had with each other. And I shouldn't say parents, because I really looked at my relationship with my dad and not so much my mom. My parents had a very interesting relationship, and I think a lot of what I saw were examples of what I would not want. My mom made the decision, and I think it was a great decision, not to have us live with them. And I say us, I'm referring to my brother, who you know, because my brother and I don't share the same dad. And love and respect to both my parents, but my dad it wasn't a great partner and wasn't a great parent either. be fair. And so she made the decision because of just, his personality to not have us in the same household, because she didn't want us to bear witness to certain things, which I think was a good decision on her part. And then, but more specifically for the question, I kind of looked at my relationship, or, reviewed my relationship with my father. And I think the way that relationship sort of impacted me was, I'm sure on a very biological level, my dad had a lot of love for me and for his kids. But I think, or what I took away from the relationship that we had, that it was very transactional. Right. And so I was conditioned to think that love from a male counterpart this is what it looks like. So in order for him to express and or show or whatever love towards me, there was something that I needed to have done something for him. So whether that would be performing well in school when I was much younger, or when I was older and in a more, financially stable position, what I could have done for him then in terms of helping him out with this, that, and the third. And subconsciously, I think that conditioned me to move through life and through my relationships in thinking that love is intended to be transactional. And so for approval or to receive love, I would have to be able to do something to, to help that person or elevate that person or whatever. And I think for a very long time before clocking it, this is how I would move through my relationships until, you learn, and then you're like, okay, so I had to unpack a lot of that so that I don't do dumb shit like that anymore. So yeah, that would be my response to the question. So yes, to answer the question in its basic form, I do believe that your relationships with your parents impact how you move, because it sort of lays a foundation for what the definition of love to you is. On a broader scale, looking at how they move, how they interact with each other or their relationship, it influences how you believe what's good in terms of communication style. It lays the blueprint for all those things, how you resolve conflicts, all that other stuff, because that's what you see. That's your first example, growing up. So yeah.
And I can also say that you can thank my dad for the fact that I am such a feminist about the roles that are, or gender roles in relationships, because my dad is a typical Caribbean male who believes that the woman's role in the relationship is to be the domesticated figure. So when I was growing up, I remember when we did have disagreements, it would always be about his perception about what I should or should not be doing, or should or should not be taught to do as a young lady growing up, and he would say things like, you're a girl, so you should be cleaning and learning how to wash dishes and how to cook.
I think a lot of Caribbean people from that era share the same sort of process of thought in terms of men are supposed to do this and women are supposed to be more domesticated. Because I was raised by my grandma, who is obviously not a man. I remember one time having a similar argument. Is like, the house cleaning and all that jazz should fall on all the women in the house. And I just remember thinking to myself, I mean, I did it because I love my grandmother to pieces. She's super kind, but we all had that fear just of her or of disappointing her. So everybody fell in line. But I remember thinking to myself, this don't feel right. Or, why should I be doing this? Like, my brother and my cousins are here and they might cause as much mess as me. So why everything I fall on my shoulders? Like, I don't mind keeping a clean house. I don't mind doing all the things. But I don't want to be, as I've said many a times on here, like, I don't want my role to be reduced to just doing this.
Okay, so the next question. Ooh. The next one. Can we unpack these traditional ideologies? These guys are like thinking deep. Whose traditions are we following?
What is a traditional ideology? Let's start there.
So this guy said that it's subjective And he said, in America, I see constant conversations about a traditional relationship being the man carrying all financial responsibilities and the woman stays at home.
Okay. Where do we get these traditional ideologies from to begin with? I would say that I believe that a lot of these things are based on religion and belief systems that have been passed down from, generation to generation to generation. Then I start to think about, well, who benefits from these ideologies in the first place? Of like, to his example, the man controlling all of the finances. Who benefits from that?
He does, in my opinion.
And why would you say that?
Because he gets to be in control
of
everything. Because if you think about it, I mean, for me, it's the patriarchy that creates these traditional ideologies. And when you think all the way back, women used to get married because they needed finances and they needed protection, right? Like if you go all the way back to the caveman, it was you finding a cave guy who can protect you from the lion or the whatever it is and protect your young. And so, and in some societies where there's a dowry or whatever for a woman, and it's like, okay, let's figure out what you're worth, or you get to marry this guy and your dad gets 2 cows or whatever it might have been at the time. So those transactions were happening between the men in society. And as women, we were there for pawns. There's a lot of discourse today where these men want to go back to that sort of society and that sociological environment. And I'm just like, it doesn't work. And I won't get into it too much in this conversation, but women have elevated themselves so much today that they don't need now to align themselves with a particular man. And that has created this loneliness crisis that we're hearing that feminism created, and that, women now are looking for the top 1% of men who can match them, who have the same education that they have, who, if they're making 6 figures, also they want a man who makes 6 figures, and men feel left behind.
Yeah, I mean, to an extent, I agree that the person to benefit the most from the patriarchal system is the male. And the person asks, can we unpack it? Unpack it to what? Are we just thinking about like, why are we following these traditions? And then to reconstruct our thought processes, I would say that what I said before, I think that religion and belief systems, culture and societal structure, all intertwined, sort of shaped the whole patriarchal system. What's so good about the time that we live in now is that we don't have to subscribe to any of that. People are free to sort of create the relationships that they want and build the structure within that relationship that they want, that whatever works best for them and their partner. So if you're in a partnership where you don't want the man to take care of all the bills, then don't do that. And if you're in a partnership where you do want the male to take care of all of the finances, then do that. Do whatever works for you. Whatever makes you and your partner comfortable, do that and be happy with that. So yeah, that's my take.
I mean, I think that, I guess and look, we are women, so we're not privy to the pressures of what it might be within the male society, right? Of what it means to them to be a man and all those types of things. And so what I would say is we need to see more, I guess, images of what it means to be a man. And to be a man, it doesn't mean that you control all the finances and that you take care of all of those things. Because I think that there might be pressure within males to make that a thing. And so that's why a lot of men are wanting that. But I don't think the conversations and social groups where men are concerned that's the energy that they have. It's sort of like, it's something else where they need to feel like they're in charge. It's probably why in some situations men feel insecure when they're with a woman who's making more money than them, because they've not been socialized to think that that's okay.
Yeah, agreed. Okay, so the next question that we received was in the form of a voice note. So I'll play that and then we can respond.
Here's my question to explore. And it has to do with communication and the freeness of communication. So here's a caveat to the question, or the context of the question is, normally when something is ending or an experience is coming to a close, individuals feel most at ease with expressing themselves fully. So in other words, think of it like you've been working a job, you put in your 2 weeks notice, you know you're about to leave, and there's just a feeling of freeness that comes over you, in ways to how you communicate, maybe amongst the people you used to work with, or just even in ways that you may communicate about how you actually feel about the work that that organization is doing. And so in a way, you're more free from the checks and balances of having to be an employee there, or wondering what people may have to fully say about what you think. So the question I have is, how can we achieve that freeness in communication in a time before you get to the end and you know that you don't have anything to lose? Does that make sense? So in other words, how can we have a relationship, or have relationships where when we're communicating openly and freely to express ourselves, so how can we have that feeling before we get to the end of an experience? That's my question.
Thoughts?
So I think I take two schools of thought with this. In listening to it, I thought about my own self and like sort of like how I approach relationships. And I would say at every part of the relationship and relationships that I get into, you have my candor. And so I'm not waiting until the end of the relationship to be completely honest with you. I'm going to be honest with you from the start. So whatever feedback I would give you at the end, you probably already knew that feedback because I gave it to you during the relationship. It's never my outlook or practice to hold myself back or hold my feedback until the end. That at that point, it's no longer helpful to us as a couple. And then I thought about it in terms of also like, what have I done in past relationships and what would I do in future relationships to create an environment that actually rewards openness and truth and creates comfortability with communication. And I guess what I would say is probably to reward the behavior that I want. So if we are in that relationship, every time that you communicate with me freely, being able to provide positive feedback to you about that so that you feel that, you know, that's something that I appreciate and something that I like. And then also, trying, which can be very difficult, especially if you receive candid feedback, that's something that you don't like, trying not to create a big deal about that so that the person feels shy, like they can't tell you exactly what they feel, because if you don't like it, you're going to scream at them or behave crazy. So being aware of how I respond to that type of communication so that it creates a comfortable environment and encouragement for you to continue to be honest with me.
The first thing that came to my mind, this sounds like me and my toddler. That's what that sounded like to me, like giving him positive reinforcement when he does something good, so he knows that this is what mommy wants you to do.
Yeah.
Or, you know, trying not to yell at him when he does something bad. So yeah, that's the first thing that came to my mind. I would say, and this is probably like completely biased, but I would say that I think for most women in relationships, they often tell you what it is that's happening that they don't like, or, you know, something that they want you to change, or whatever the case might be. And oftentimes that falls on deaf ears. So I don't know if women are the problem in this scenario. I'm sorry. I know that's biased, but I just, you know, that's my thought process.
Listen.
And then the other thing that came to my mind too was just, you know, it's working on your communication skills, as you know, similar to what you've said, working on your communication skills so that you can communicate in a very healthy way. And And I feel like if you're struggling with that in the beginning, or you realize that, this is an issue, then maybe taking the next step, which I would say would be probably seeking counseling to learn how to communicate with each other. If the relationship is that important to you, and that goes both ways, it's probably going to be harder to convince a guy to go to therapy or counseling or whatever. But if it is important and you want it to work and you want to learn how to communicate with each other and you can't do that on your own, then get help. It's that simple. And then, it's having a relationship that you're comfortable in and with each other.
Mm-hmm.
So that you want that open communication, and, so it's until like the end when shit's falling apart and
It's too late.
Yeah, it's too late. It's too late to save. So that's my take. A bit biased, but
listen, it's real. It's real.
But
the other thing too is, and maybe nobody's going to agree with me on this, but this is something that I have done in past relationships. Mm-hmm. If I have something to say that I feel like may hurt your feelings, or if I feel as though I'm not able to provide that feedback in a respectful way, mm-hmm. I write a note, because if I have to write it down, mm-hmm. then I have to put my thoughts together. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And I can read it back before I give it to you. And if it sounds crazy, I'm like, okay, that's not like, I don't want you to get caught up in the way how I wrote this, and I write it again and I deliver that as a note. And it gives me the freedom to write what I need to get it out, and get it out in a cohesive manner. And it also helps me to calm down, so that in the heat of the moment, I'm not screaming at you. I take a moment to gather my thoughts, write it on a sticky note. When you get home or whatever it is, you have a sticky note with my feedback, or I write it in the notes app, and then I send you a text that might be a little long, but explains why I'm upset and why I don't agree with anything you did or whatever.
My knee-jerk reaction to that, they're not reading that shit. You take one look at the length of it and charge, but the guys who are listening can sound off and
yeah, say, I've dated a sensitive man, so
I just know that, like the people that I know oftentimes aren't necessarily engaging in reading lengthy reports of what is
they did
that
wrong.
You don't like.
I hear you. Look, I said it was nerdy. I said it was.
I'm not saying that I haven't done it. This is how nerdy. I know. This is how I know that they don't like it. I'm not saying I haven't done it, because I feel like you, it's probably once I'm a little bit calmer, I can express everything, but I can express everything in the note a little bit more clearly.
Yes.
However, I can also pose the argument that, text, notes, whatever, can always be misconstrued as well. So even if you have the best of intentions in just highlighting, what you think the issues are, what you didn't like, you never know how the person on the other end who's reading it, how they're going to take that. And, and so it can also one can make the argument that that's also not useful. And the best way is just to really have the conversation face to face, maybe when, calmer heads can prevail. But I think the underlying issue for me is that if the communication style is a problem, or you're having difficulty in that arena, and you can't figure it out on your own, then you should seek help. If the relationship is that important to you to save, seek help. All right, guys. So that's all the questions that we have for now. We appreciate the listeners / subscribers who sent us those questions.
Yes.
For any other male or even female subscribers or listeners that we have, join in the conversation. Give us your thoughts or your responses to those questions that we addressed. And if you have any more that you would like to hear us respond to or give our takes on, please leave them in the comments. We thank you for listening. We thank you for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe and share this with your friends if you think that they'll find our content interesting. We appreciate you. And until next time, guys,
join the group chat. Bye.
Bye.